Welcome to another episode of Cinema Red Pill. I'm Sharon, your host. Today I'm having my first interview. It's the first time I'm interviewing someone under Uganda, and I hope you're Ugandan.
I am, that's correct.
So today I'm here with Malcolm Bigyemano.
Yeah, that's correct.
Good, I've said it.
You practice
right.
a bit?
No.
No, you didn't ask anyone?
All I didn't even ask.
There's so many ways that can go wrong, and it has.
I'm my first Ugandan filmmaker. I'm really excited because for the last, I think, 3 podcasts now, we've had international films, and I needed something pure from here. The real goods. Malcolm has made 3 short films so far.
Definitely more. The only 3 short films that I'm not embarrassed to show people.
That's wrong.
That's almost how everyone talks about their film work, I think. Most people have worked on a bunch of, because I consider even any like commercial work is a film. Like, I haven't done any music videos, but I'd consider those films as well. And class assignments where I don't know what I'm doing. So there's been a lot of films, but the only 3 that I'm like, yeah.
You're happy to show?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Today we're acknowledging the 3 you're happy to show.
Yes.
I hope you'll talk a bit about the ones you're embarrassed to show.
100%.
So the 3 are Taj Mahal Halal,
Yes.
Pregnant Woman Stabs Husband Dead,
Yes.
and Jethro by Jethro.
Jethro by Jethro. Yeah,
Have I said them in the order they were released?
That's correct. Taj Mahal Halal was 2014. Pregnant Woman Stabs Husband Dead 2015. Jethro by Jethro 2016. Yeah.
Cool. I watched them all twice.
Great.
They're short enough.
You didn't have to, but I appreciate that.
You didn't have to. So Malcolm, I'm curious because I've heard about you before.
Okay.
Plenty. Most people in the film community know about you.
What?
Yeah, you're a big deal.
What? Get out. Stop.
So, and I have no idea about you, your story, anything.
I like this. So I can lie to you and you would have no idea.
No lies.
Great.
If you lie, So I want to start from the beginning. When did you fall in love with film? At that point.
I think I enjoyed films and enjoyed going to the cinema and enjoyed the experience of it. But it only clicked that people make these things and put thought into every decision that makes the thing when Al Jazeera for a while was running I've forgotten the name of the series, but it was about filmmakers and international films, and I saw these different filmmakers from around the world talking about their things. But Martin Scorsese comes on for one of the editions and he's talking about Goodfellas. I know this is a kind of a lot of people probably say this, but he talked about Goodfellas, and I'd seen Goodfellas in passing a couple of times on East Africa TV's like Sunday night movie thing that they used to do. And I'd seen Goodfellas, I used to show it a couple of times, and I enjoyed it, but I never thought about it in detail in terms of how it came across. And he talks about the opening scene and how you see, I forget the actor's name, but he's the main character, and him and Robert De Niro's character and Joe Pesci's character, they stop the car, standing behind the boot, they hear banging coming from inside of the boot, and then they pop the trunk, and this red light is just bathing all over them because it's the brake lights, right? The brake lights for the car, because they're standing behind it, it's just bathing them in redness. And then they open up the trunk and they kill the guy some more because he wasn't dead properly. And then there's a freeze frame, and the main character goes, the voiceover is, ever since I was a kid I wanted to be a gangster.
Yeah.
No, still alive. No, fucking piece of shit. God, look at me. Look at my fucking eyes. God.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
And I'd seen that probably 5-6 times, but I'd never thought about how it was composed and put together. And Scorsese is talking about just the little things that he did, the decisions, creative decisions that it took to make that happen. And I was amazed. Everything from the camera movement to the music that was happening to the use of sound of the voiceover and the freeze frame. And I'd always taken that for granted. When I realized people have to think about that, they have to like decide what goes. That was the moment that I was like, this is what I want. That's what I want to do.
Sweet. That's cool. So did you study film?
I did at some point.
At what point?
In university. I majored in film and media studies.
Where did you study?
At the University of Cape Town. In Cape
So
Town.
you majored in what?
Film and media studies. That was my major.
That was cool.
Yeah.
So what were you learning there?
In
Do
film and
they
media
make
studies?
you an all-rounder, or do they teach you specific? They make you an all-rounder in screenwriting and editing.
So at first it's just film and media studies, right? And that's just a very general thing. First years, you do everything. So first you do like a film studies thing in the first semester, then media studies in second semester. And it's all theoretical stuff. It's all
theory.
It's all theory. In first year, it's all theory. And it's all, what does the media mean? What does film mean? How do representations of people...
Would you watch some films and analyze?
100%, yeah. And that's what they're teaching you as well, you know?
What films did you watch? What's the best film you watched in school?
Oh man, in school? The film I remember being most excited about, at least that gave me so much life, was... it's a very... Do the Right Thing, to be honest.
Nice.
We studied Do the Right Thing, and... It's also around the time that I was kind of trying to figure out kind of racial politics and whatnot in South Africa, because I never had to really deal with them all that much in Uganda. And for some reason, Do the Right Thing was just so full of energy and just so cool, and I enjoyed reading about it, reading what people at the time were saying about it, what scholars have gone on to say about it over the years, and just getting to know it on that deeper level, the level of what it means and how it reflects society, what effect it has on society and how society affects it. And that's what first year was pretty much, was just understanding what symbols and images and angles and what and all that stuff means to society and how society affects it and how that loop works pretty much.
Great. Was Taj Mahal Halal one of the ones you did in South Africa?
It was.
Because I could tell the characters were South African.
100%. It was my graduation film. It was the film where it was my version of how people do like a thesis and they do like a research project and what. It was literally called the student research project, SRP, and our thing was you have to make a movie.
26. I know you wouldn't pick up if he was home. No, because you're too pretty to be sleeping alone.
Is that Gatsby ready?
Of course, baby, I'm always ready for you.
Get off the fucking phone.
No, I only get off in an hour. Then maybe I can get you off.
By that story, I liked it.
A couple of things that stood out for me were first the shop, right? Taj Mahal Halal was this particular kind of shop that I had never necessarily seen before, but it was very much a feature of Cape Town, where it's a smaller scale operation than like a ShopRite or like a Checkers or like a Pick and Pay. It's smaller, right?
Yeah.
But it's also usually many times they were run by immigrants, by either Indian immigrants. Sometimes in some neighborhoods there were colored family people who ran them. They had usually had this very iconic Coca-Cola like signage, right? So there's lots of red going on, and all the signs are like in a Coca-Cola thing with the swoosh, Coca-Cola swoosh going around. The very like iconic things about it that you'd find almost everywhere. And they had a food section. That was the coolest thing about them.
That was random.
They had a food section. You'd go in and you could, you're buying toothpaste and stuff, but you can also buy a sandwich.
Yeah.
And they had this really iconic sandwich called the Gatsby, which is how I survived a lot of my third year when I wasn't living in the hostel anymore and in res anymore.
It's like the submarine.
Exactly. It's exactly a submarine.
Exactly.
And it's like just a big ass loaf of bread and a layer of chips, a layer of meat. So the meat is what you usually like negotiate, and you're like, you want chicken, you want mix this, you want the things, you want it spicy, you want it not. The layer of meat and then a layer of veggies and then sauces and stuff, and then you cover that up, and it's huge. My roommate and I used to take us for like 2-3 days. Just a big ass sandwich. You cut a section of it and you have a big ass meal, and your stomach is swollen for a while, and you don't have to cook for a minute. You just warm it throughout like the weekend for like a couple of days. And it was just things like that were very close to where I lived. There was an actual Taj Mahal Halal around the corner from my house, a place called, and I thought it sounded nice. And I thought I'd make a movie about kind of that place, but what kind of sinisterism could possibly happen in a place like that, which is not necessarily true. And looking back, I feel like my visitation of it might not have been all that great. I might have been a bit problematic, drug stereotypes and whatnot. But I enjoyed.
Did you have a problem with it?
With what?
The way you're talking is like someone must have approached you like.
No, I watched it myself.
So you're not so proud of the content of the movie. Like,
I'm very self-critical.
I'm seeing.
I'm very self-critical. So when I watch a thing, I'm also trying to figure out how other people watch it as well. And when I was watching Taj Mahal, to be honest,
but it was self-referential also because she speaks about herself.
Sure.
Being stereotyped.
Sure, yeah, it does. But there were things about it that I wish I'd done differently.
What would you have
better.
done differently?
I think I would have characterized it a little bit differently. I would have.
What bugged you the most?
What bugged me the most? So I felt we had it. It bugged me that our criminals to some extent were the people of color in the film. Even if we didn't specify that in the script necessarily, that the main characters would be two white girls, but the audition process ended up yielding that because we didn't specify that we want this race of person or that. At the time, I think it was also my understanding of like identity politics and stuff. At the time I just thought, you know what, let's see who does the things best and we'll figure it out and we'll do the things. So just keep it open, And I didn't realize at the time that when you do that and you don't specify and you just keep it open, the people with the most privilege and the most access to information and resources are the ones who are going to turn up the most.
I know.
Trevor Noah talks about that thing where when he was starting the Daily Show, he was making calls looking for writers. And most of the people that he found were all these white guys, right? All these white people, really white men. And he was like, where are the black people? Where are the people of color? Where are the Africans? Where are the people who reflect my worldview a bit better, a wider worldview a bit better? And he found them at some point at some like comedy club. And they were just like, we had no idea this was a thing that was even happening because he hadn't been deliberate enough as well in searching, in looking for them.
Yeah, you have to try hard when it comes to some of those things.
Yeah.
Okay. Was this your first film, real film set that was super serious? Your own was first.
That it was I had directed a film before in the school program, in the university program, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Okay.
I didn't know what directing is. I didn't know what it means. And Taj Mahal was my way of kind of figuring out what does this directing thing even mean. It's just yelling action and cut and all that. What does it actually mean? Taj Mahal was the first time I made a film understanding what it means to control what people are seeing, to control what people can hear, how the camera moves, what you reveal, what you don't reveal, how the mood changes over time and how you moderate that and make it realistic. It's the first time I understood those things, and which is why I like to say it was my first film because I kind
it is a great first film. Now
Do you
let's
like
move to your second. Yeah.
Okay.
Pregnant woman stabs husband dead.
Takaona yali msomesa.
Kituufu nnyo baaba. Abasomesa bedda bali nga basirikale. Ewaka twali mu butu camp. Kabeere maama kabeerani ekigambo kikyali lo. Nga wayogera teryaddamu simanyira biki. N'omala okola ensobi. Yali akutuma kibooko. Yali agitereka mu kikapu tekyali kiringanga bwe kiti. Ng'ogijjayo kibooko ne weebaka wansi. N'alyoka akusamula nga bw'ozibala. Yali akukuba
Kwata.
emu. Biri.
Kwata.
Ate n'omala obikaabiramu n'akuwulira.
Kwata. Ngakwongera.
Ngakwongera endala.
Ngakwongera.
Kati nno kyali kwekyo. Bw'amala ng'ekyo nga weewumbeka bulungi bw'oti n'omwebaza
A complete shift from Taj Mahal. Yeah, so I'm really curious with that transition. Why that story? You wrote it?
Yes.
And directed it?
Yes.
When was this?
This was in 2015.
That was actually the
Last
first
year.
film of yours I watched.
Oh yeah?
Because I watched it at the Short Film Festival.
Oh cool.
And you guys super hyped the film.
Really?
Yeah, like the entire cast.
In the introduction? Yeah. It was I think it was our first like public screening of the film.
Everyone.
So I think everyone was really excited.
There?
I was there.
You know, the people I recognized more was the actors actually.
They're visible because they're visible.
They're the visible people.
And you've seen them before, I guess.
One. The one of the guys. No, two. Even the other guy, the one who was the father.
I had a beard at the time. So
see, that's why as was it really low?
It was it covered my collar.
This is see?
Covered my collar.
So I remember that that was the first film.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Why the story, the character and making his motivations exactly that. What brought you to come with this story?
So I read the story in the red paper. It was a time when I remember I was consciously trying to absorb stories, and I just moved back to Uganda like 2 months before, and I was actively, consciously trying to absorb stories, and I was reading red paper of like not just the people usually read. I find the beginning, which is the most explosive, like political stories, the middle, which is the more like licentious, like not licentious, but like tantalizing sex stuff, and the end, which is maybe sports or whatever, right? And I started, I was reading, and I saw the story that was called "Pregnant Woman Stabs Husband Dead," and that struck me. First of all, that was the first thing.
That was the exact headline.
That was the headline, and it struck me. I thought something about that just told me this is not a terrible idea. And I read the story, and the story was about this lady who, it was about this lady whose husband comes home and one afternoon he's really drunk, and they get into a fight, they get into an altercation. She was pregnant at the time. They get into an altercation, and the son gets involved in the altercation, and then he's hitting her, and then her son comes and tries to like save her or whatever, and then he turns his back on him, and he starts to beat up her son, and then she finally comes through and stabs him in the thigh, and he bleeds to death. And the thing that made it stick for me, to be honest, was thinking, what if that's not what happened? Thinking there was no one else in the room at the time.
Yeah.
And if the story actually happened very differently, we have no way of knowing. So I started going down that road and trying to figure out what else could have possibly happened, and how else could the story have played out if we didn't know. So I became aware of that idea of having the public kind of narrative, what everyone is aware of, and having the actual narrative, and kind of just playing with that, where people go into the film expecting this to be a film about a lady who stabs her husband, and that's not what actually ends up happening. And I was trying to see how that would affect how people receive the film, the fact that they have these expectations of what the story is already, because most people hate the title. And I tell them what it is, they hate how long it is, how clunky it is. Grammatically, that's not how people even talk, so it's not easy to remember.
It's ridiculous.
And they think it tells you what the story is.
Yeah.
But I just thought, you know what? The fact that it's so ridiculous probably makes it memorable to some extent. Just even if you don't remember what it is, you remember that there's this movie with this really crazy title I can't remember. And also, I love the fact that you go in very smug, thinking you know what the story is, and at the end you're like, what?
I went the opposite. I'm like, no.
Did you? So how did that work for you?
Finding, it can't
First
be
of all,
this
the title?
obvious. The title was like, oh, that's silly. That was my reaction.
Yeah.
And I even want to ask you, how did you get your boy to be so enthusiastic about the film?
I'm not sure.
Everyone was just so enthusiastic about the film.
I'm not sure.
They had a vibe to them. I think I remember the reaction of the
cast and crew
more than anything.
Yeah.
They were so enthusiastic. I'm like, this guy must really make them passionate about the project.
They seem to actually like it.
I can't believe,
No,
which is really inspiring.
I'm always sitting here like, what? Possibly.
So hype. Then
I'm also the wrong person to tell you why I think people would like the film. I don't think I'm the right person for that. Can I say that I was also surprised at how kind of disturbed I was by the violence, and I watch it back now and I realize we kind of had weak stomachs on set when it came to executing that part, because not only was the violence the least rehearsed, which was a big mistake, but also I realized I was very uncomfortable making violence happen, and I was very surprised by that, because I'd never made simulated violence in a film. So I was uncomfortable making it happen, making this guy beat his wife, and I was like, I don't know why, I could feel it in myself, and I was very surprised by that. But I could see it in him as well. And I still, every time I watch the film again, I'm like, you're bad at being a wife beater, which is great for life, you know. It's great to know that, I guess to some extent, there's something very personal that stopped him accessing that very violent thing.
Were you making it the alcohol that drove him to it?
To some extent, but also, the whole point of the first conversation, at least to me, the whole point of the conversation in the Kafunda with those three guys was to give you an idea of how also being a man and these ideas of what it means to be a man as opposed to in relation to women and in relation to children, and how when you're with men, in a way, it creates a, I don't want to use the word echo chamber, but it creates almost a bubble of delusion, you know? We're like, yeah, look at us, we're men, we have dominance over all the things, and we do all the things, and yet they have very real weaknesses. Every one of them has very real weaknesses, and they never really even confront the weaknesses amongst themselves as men. So I felt this guy kind of goes out into the world and he performs this idea of what it means to be a man that's somehow contradictory to even the reality in the situation, where he's still being very entitled to, you know, to things that he has not made possible in the world. So I felt I did not want it to be super obvious
that he would do it,
because I feel that's how it actually plays out in life. You hear that someone has gotten into an altercation with their partner, they've beaten their partner, and you're like, what? I can't believe it. I would have never. We were having a drink the other day, and he seemed like such a cool guy, or I listened, and he seemed like such a cool person. But they've done this really horrendous thing. Where did that even come from? And that's kind of what I wanted to bring out more than anything. Is not only how hard it is to see from the get-go, but also how it interplays with other aspects of corporal punishment was a big one.
Yeah,
how corporal punishment and domestic violence are kind of, I think they what's this thing I'm doing with my hands? They overlap. They overlap quite a bit in ways that we sometimes don't recognize. So yeah, I didn't want him to look like a wife beater. I wanted you to even like him when it starts out, and then to see him devolve into the actual piece of shit that he is deep down, and not be overly surprised by it, but you were surprised by it.
Yeah. How many takes do you usually do?
Not enough.
But what's the average? Like 15? 5?
You know, it really depends.
Sometimes you do one take?
Yeah. And I find many times at the beginning of the day, we will do more takes, and as we progress throughout the day, there's less and less until people start to get tired, and then we start to do more takes. So by the end of the day, we're kind of where we started. You know what? I'd say let's say an average of 10 takes, starting out from, and by takes just from a particular angle, just trying that thing 10 times. And over time it reduces. Slowly people start to get into the groove of it, and they start to it becomes easier for them to, you know, access the character. And then when they get tired, it starts, concentration wavers, people get a bit impatient, and then it becomes a bit harder to reach that same level of performance.
Was this your first movie in Uganda after you had come from South Africa?
Pregnant Woman Stabs Husband Dead? Yes.
So how many days did it take you doing Pregnant Woman Stabs Husband Dead?
It wasn't consecutive, but yeah, it wasn't consecutive. But altogether, I would say we shot 4 days, a total of 4 days.
Sweet, that's a short time. Then how about Taj Mahal Halal?
Taj Mahal Halal, we shot over, I'd say 4 days as well. We had 4 days, because we had 1 day outside, 2 days in the shop, and one, I wouldn't even count it as a day, it wasn't a full day, but 1 day at Dot's house.
Okay. Big question.
Yeah.
Funding, how did you fund it?
Which one? Pregnant Woman Stabs Husband Dead?
Yeah.
So I've been working for a few months at an advertising agency. So when I left, I made Pregnant Woman Stabs Husband Dead, and I had saved to the extent that you can say a person has saved. Luckily enough, I'm very blessed to live with my parents. No. So what we did was, we had an arrangement where, initially the arrangement was if food and transport are taken care of, and food and transport to rehearsals and everything is taken care of, we are able to, we can do the things, right? That's the agreement that we had. But then I realized at some point, I was having a hard time even getting people to So, for example, if an audition came up, right, and it was a paid audition for a thing, this happened the day before we were first supposed to shoot, and we had to postpone it because many people were like, we heard about the audition, we went for the audition, and we thought it was going to take like 2 hours, but it never takes 2 hours. There are lines of people, and it takes the whole day. And we weren't able to get a rehearsal in the day before we were shooting, and I still didn't feel safe about the things, but also I could tell the commitment wasn't really there.
Because of no payment?
And I think that was part of it for sure. So I cancelled the shoot. I started looking for other people to work on the things. I felt that the waters had been muddied a bit.
Wow.
And I felt it would be difficult to get that same commitment from these people again. And I did find some people. Then after a while, some of the original people, we worked it out. But that's when I talked to my parents. And I said, okay, so here's the thing.
Help me out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I thought I was going to manage to do this by myself. And they've been telling me, you need to pay these people, you need to pay these people. I was like, no, you know, art, love, we all love film.
Yeah,
what?
very funny.
So when I came back hat in hand, I was like, actually, I need your help. I need to at least be able to tell these people that there's a certain lump sum that they will be getting for having worked on the film that more than covers their transport, but it's also something to just keep in their pockets as well. And it wasn't much, and it was less than they would get on a professional set where there's a bigger budget and whatnot. But it made a difference. I could tell even for rehearsals and for getting to set, it definitely made a difference.
Wow. Okay, that's good. And estimate how much did it all cost?
Altogether, Pregnant Woman Stabs Husband Dead cost me, I would say, 4.5 million shillings.
That is not a bad figure.
It's not the worst. It's not the worst, but I only say it in this way because I thought it would cost much less. But we planned good, yeah. So first of all, even just the payment thing, of course, came in and made it cost more. There's also miscellaneous things, you know, the little things that you don't necessarily anticipate, but I think you should anticipate that there are things you won't anticipate.
Okay.
So that's become the thing that I'm kind of learning.
Now let's move to Jethro by Jethro.
Okay.
Ndisi Uganda's first cypher come to create ngafo bokaba mega pictures tusangibwa ndeba industry for bajita ndeba wudu era ngafa single.
Sorry, what's your name?
Madam, my name's called Michael Megapixels Megapictures Chiwanuka.
Okay. And the title of the movie you're pitching?
Film ya feno bajita Toilet Time Travelers bagendera mu toy. Kati waliwo ba mafia bano.
Is it all in Uganda?
Yeah, madam, you're not in Uganda.
But the advert clearly said we only wanted stories in English.
Madam, olaba solo kusako buno bugundi buno.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chiwanka, there's nothing we can do for you.
Huh?
There is nothing we can do for you.
Did things get easier with Jethro by Jethro? Since you had gone through those two, and now in Uganda you had gone through, and Jethro by Jethro is set in one place, so I'm really imagining things must have been better.
No, it just presented a whole different kind of worms, where there's some things that were no longer as much of a concern, no longer as much of an issue. We're lucky enough with Jethro by Jethro that the majority of our actors were younger.
But I like the lady you used.
Diana Kahunda.
Yes.
Yeah, she's from. You recognize her from the hostel?
Yeah, from the hostel and many
other things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She was so great to work with, and she was very professional. And it was so nice having her on set as well with that. Because some actors, for example, it was their first time, and it was great to have her on set as well. Kind of, you know, for them to have a colleague who, because okay, I'm directing and I'm doing my best to help them get through the things. But another actor is the best person to definitely give them some guidance.
So, story for Jethro by Jethro.
Sure.
I'm very sure a couple of things run by me.
Okay.
With Jethro by Jethro.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me give you what I think
is happening.
Is mostly with the character that I concentrated on and who you concentrated on, because she's the outlier of everyone.
Yes.
The character Sharon, can't forget her name.
Yes.
Because she seems to be the only one who's not aware that she's in a film.
Yeah.
Why? I could go the cheap route of a dream sequence, which is the cheapest way to solve
Okay.
any plot line.
That doesn't make sense.
If
Anything
it
that
doesn't make sense, you can
it
say
must be
this
dream
was
logic.
a dream.
It's dream logic.
So you could go with the dream logic.
Yeah.
Cheapskate. Or there was there's no other explanation. Were they playing her? Were they scamming her in some way? Why isn't she aware that she's in a film?
So this film was it was the kind of film, and I've seen shorts do this thing where they create a disturbance in the rules of the world, right? Where there's this short film, I forget what it's called, about a guy who walks in slow motion, right? And the entire world is the only person who walks in slow motion, and everyone else is doing their thing and living life and going in regular time, but he just walks in slow motion, and that creates the problem in the thing, and it does the things. I didn't realize this while I was writing the script, because it was inspired by other things, and one thing led to another, and it spiraled. And I promise you, it is only when we were in the middle of making it that I was like, that's what's happening, this is what it is. So here's my theory. Okay, my theory is Sharon's character, Sharon stroke Annette, is only able to perceive the things that are within the frame, because the frame is only a certain. If you think about it, you have the frame, but there's so many things happening outside of it within the world, right? But she's only able to perceive the things that are happening within the frame. So even when we as film watchers know that in any given situation you're shooting a person, sure, but there's a room full of people doing things and lighting and booming and doing all the things. Whereas all the other characters who are being actors would be aware of that and perform life as though they're not aware of it but are still aware of it. And when they call cut, they relax and they do other things and they talk about how the things have been going. She's only aware of what's happening within the frame. So it's only when the director within the frame calls cut and she sees the boom mic coming into the frame and she sees the clapper and the makeup being done and everything, that's when she's like, what is this? Where is this coming from? What is going on? What is amiss? But yeah, that's the explanation pretty much. Is she is. Someone watched it recently and they put it as though she was in the Truman Show. She was being watched and she was being observed the entire time and she just had no idea. Everyone else is being watched and observed as well. She just has no awareness of the fact that that's happening. So there was no sinister plot underlying it or whatever.
Yeah, you're playing with reality, I guess. But it's set up for your next film, did it?
We can say that.
On a maybe basis.
And by next, you know what, let's not even say next. It made me think about, it gave me an idea that I realized was way too big for me to execute at this point in time.
That's sad.
Toilet Time
Because I wanted
Travelers.
to ask, yes, Toilet Time Travelers is what you sort of set up.
Yeah.
Future film?
Possibly.
When?
Toilet Time Travelers?
No, not
Next film?
When will you do a feature film?
A feature film?
Yeah.
So I guess you never really stop learning, but I'm still in that place where I'm not so sure I can make a 90-minute film.
Why?
As interesting as I can make a 10, 15-minute film. Someone put this really well for me. Matt Bish, right? You know Matt Bish?
No.
He's a director, and he made State Research Bureau and I think Battle of the Souls. And for a while, I think when Battle of the Souls came out, people were like, Uganda, oh my gosh. Do you remember that? Like 10, 15 years ago?
No, I need to catch up on that.
The film industry has begun. This is the Renaissance. This is the beginning of the things. And he came back from the Netherlands. I think he made Battle of the Souls, like an experimental fantasy horror film. And it did relatively well at festivals, and yeah, so I met him sometime last year and we're talking about the same thing, and he said I'd been thinking about this as well, but he put it very succinctly in a way that I never would have. He compared filmmaking skills, craft or talent to juice concentrate, to like quencher. Was quencher a concentrate? You have to dilute it?
You have to dilute it.
Compared it to a concentrate, where over time you do develop your skill and your concentrate increases, but the length of your film is almost like the size of the glass and or pitcher, so that at a certain point in time it is not easy for a first-time filmmaker to make a potent glass of juice. or to make a potent picture of juice. You know what I mean? You can make maybe a glass and you enjoy it and whatever, but to make a potent picture of juice where it's really hard, it's a bit hard to explain, but I just feel I would love for my feature films to be at a certain level that I don't think I'm at yet. I'm not doing that delusional thing where it's like, I want it to be the best. No, I just want it to be watchable, you know, for like 90 straight minutes. And I think I'm getting there. My next film, I couldn't keep it under 15. It's about 30 pages. I can see it going up to about 30 minutes now. The story just could not be contained within a few minutes. And I feel like that might organically expand into 90 minutes into a feature film.
So what's this next film called?
I hate saying this because I might change my mind.
Change it.
And
when do you? What's it called?
But at least for now, Ignorance is Bliss or something like that.
Okay. When do you plan to shoot and release?
Early next year. I plan to shoot early next year and release it in the middle of next year.
This has been fun. I have to ask you though. Top 5.
Are we almost done?
Yeah.
No.
Are you doing?
I was enjoying this. I'm enjoying it so much.
Wait, that's good.
Also, I feel like I've talked about myself way too much, and I'd really like to talk about other things.
And that's where we're going. I want to ask you your top 5.
Wow, I don't have a top 5.
Okay, you have a top what? What's your favorite genre?
I'm shaking my head right now.
What are your influences?
I find they vary and they change. They change during different periods of time. Right now, the last time I watched a film and it kind of not punched me in the gut, but it really like grabbed my attention and made me think about how I make my own films. Was Nicholas Winding Refn's Neon Demon.
No.
Yeah, and only because.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
How much did you hate it? Tell me.
I didn't hate it. I liked it more than most.
Okay.
But no.
So I just watched Drive,
Drive
right?
is way better.
Drive is really great. The thing I like about this is it does some things that Drive doesn't do.
What
and I don't
do you
see
like
them
about
as...
Neon Demon?
So I like the same thing that he did in Drive, where I love the way he composes his shots. I love the way he's able to tell a story with even just one shot within an entire scene. And I was watching that, I was studying it, and I was like, okay, this is so cool how in just one camera movement, one slow, deliberate camera movement, you can tell just a very interesting story and slowly reveal things and people move in and out, and I found that really fascinating. I loved how it was almost more like a music video than a film. I loved how visually, I feel like they were very unhinged to some extent in the liberties that they took to portray things in a certain way. But I still thought that in some way was a bit more poetic, in the sense of, okay, it's the fashion industry, and of course they're very like visually striking images that they use to make things happen. But I felt there's so much stuff that they did that was almost surreal in that film and I love the way he matches that, his visual aesthetic, with his choice of music, which is always almost perfect. Okay. That very like almost European electronic like music vibe, and his camera movements and composition completely matches it really well. I was like, man, this is almost film music. Like the way it comes together, it's very consistent, it's very coherent, and I hope you can tell most of the things I'm saying about this are aesthetic.
Everything you're saying is aesthetic. Nothing has to do with character.
Exactly.
How about any local influences?
Any local influences?
Yeah.
So, you know what? I'm not yet cognizant of. Yeah, actually, he's very much an influence. Isaac Nabwana is 100% an influence.
Really?
Yeah, I'm developing a story that's so like.
That's so nice.
Influenced by his work and the stories that I've heard about the way he puts his stories together. And I feel like his is a very extreme but very still Ugandan story. I feel like there are so many Ugandan filmmakers who... Kampala's film scene, first of all, is very fractured. There are lots of people making films. Many times they're not even aware of each other. They're very like distant from each other. They're not... And... I found there are many filmmakers who, like Isaac, are very resourceful. They don't use much money. They have almost no reverence or regard for film conventions. I love it so much. I watched Who Killed Captain Alex properly for like the first time because I'd seen the trailer and I'd seen the YouTube cut, which is another animal.
It's
another
not
animal in and of itself.
what you're supposed to watch.
It's not, but I love it. I love that it's an English. I think it's an English voiceover over Uganda voiceover over. It's an English voiceover over guy speaking Uganda with English subtitles, and all three of those things are different. There are times when you're watching the film and you're like, these are three different films happening concurrently because of the information that I'm getting. And I love the idea that his films are possibly even more interesting. The stories I've heard, his films sound just as exciting to make as to watch.
Right.
They sound like just adventures in and of themselves. And I haven't met him yet, even if that would be just a huge honor. But I recently got a couple of his films and I actually watched them, and I can say I like him from an informed perspective.
Okay, you've been listening to Cinema Red Pill. I'm Sharon, as here with
Malcolm.
The Twitter handle is at that Malcolm guy. So follow him on Twitter. Check out his stuff. You have some stuff that's free online, don't you?
I see that very hesitant. Taj Mahal
One
is
of
actually
your
the only
videos
film
is
that
free.
is free online.
Yeah. So get on Vimeo, right?
The other two I'm trying to do the festival thing.
Thanks for listening to Cinema Red Pill. If you agree or have some feedback for us, just email me on sharon@cinemaredpill.com. Thanks for listening.